All right, today we're going to pull back the curtain on something you use every single day, probably without even knowing it. It's this invisible engine that powers a massive part of the internet. We're talking about NGINX, and to really get why it's so important, we only need to ask one simple question. I mean, really think about that. It's a Friday night, right? Millions of us decide to hit play on the new big thing pretty much all at once. How on earth does that system not just completely collapse? How does that perfect high-def video stream to your screen without a single hiccup? Well, a huge piece of that magic, the secret sauce behind services like Netflix, is this amazing software called NGINX. It's the unsung hero that's managing all of that incredible simultaneous demand. So, what is this thing and why was it even created in the first place? To get it, we really have to jump in a time machine and go way back to the early days of the internet. See, the web used to be a much simpler place. But as it got more popular, it created this massive problem. A problem that NGINX was literally born to solve. Back then, the whole setup was pretty straightforward. Your web browser would ask for a page, and a single server on the other side of the world would get the page ready and send it back to you. One request, one server. Super simple, super clean, and it worked just fine for the traffic they had at the time. But then, the web just exploded. I mean, it became wildly popular, and all of a sudden, it wasn't one request at a time, it was thousands, then millions, all hammering this one poor server. It was like a single-lane country road, suddenly having to handle rush hour for New York City. The old way of doing things just completely broke. So, how do you fix that kind of traffic jam? Well, the obvious answer is you add more roads, or, in this case, more servers. But that creates a new problem, right? How do you decide which car or which request goes to which server? This is where NGINX had its first big moment, evolving from just a web server into a really smart traffic hop. We call this a load balancer. To do this job, NGINX acts as what we call a proxy. Now, that word just means it's acting on behalf of someone else. You know, a great way to think about it is like a concierge at a really fancy, busy hotel. NGINX stands right at the front door, it greets all the incoming traffic, and then it expertly figures out exactly where each request needs to go. So here's how that little dance works, in 3 simple steps. First, your request comes in and arrives at NGINX. Second, NGINX takes a super quick look at all the servers it's managing to see which one is the healthiest and has the least amount of work to do. And finally, boom, it sends your request to the best possible server for the job. And all of this happens billions of times a day in the blink of an eye. But just being a traffic cop? That was only the beginning. Once NGINX was sitting there at the front door for all these websites, developers realized, hey, we can make it do a lot more. It started to gain these superpowers that made the entire web faster, safer, and way more efficient. We're going to zoom in on 3 of the most important superpowers. First up is caching, which is just a clever trick for making websites load almost instantly. Then there's security, where NGINX basically turns into a digital fortress. And third, we've got compression, which is crucial for saving bandwidth, especially when you're doing something like streaming video. Okay, let's talk caching. Imagine a huge breaking news story on a site like the New York Times. Millions of people are clicking on it at once. Now, without caching, the server would have to build that page from scratch, fetch the text, grab the images, load the ads for every single person. That's a ton of wasted work. So instead, NGINX builds the page one time, stores a finished copy in its memory, that's the cache, and then just hands out that same pre-built copy to everybody. The performance boost is just massive. All right, next up, security. By being that single front door, NGINX offers a huge security advantage. Think about it. If you had 100 servers all connected to the internet, that's like having 100 doors a hacker could try to kick in. But by putting NGINX in front of all of them, you shrink that down to just one heavily guarded entrance. It's exactly like this quote says, it acts like a shield, dramatically reducing your attack surface. And that brings us full circle back to Netflix with compression. A high-definition movie file is absolutely enormous. If they tried to send that raw file to millions of us, it would just grind the internet to a halt. So NGINX can actually shrink those files down on the fly, compressing them to make them smaller. And what does that mean for you? Well, the video gets to you faster, you get less of that annoying buffering, and it uses less of your precious internet data. It's a win-win. So everything we've talked about so far is sort of the classic web server setup. But the internet doesn't stand still, does it? It's always evolving. And with the rise of the cloud and really powerful tools like Kubernetes, NGINX had to evolve right along with it. See, in a lot of modern apps, you don't have one big clunky program anymore. You have dozens of tiny little services, called microservices, all running together in what's called a Kubernetes cluster. In this new world, NGINX takes on a new, really specialized job. It becomes an Ingress controller. Just think of it as the internal traffic director for this busy, complex city of microservices. So the journey for your request today is more of a two-step process. First, it hits the main load balancer from a cloud provider like Amazon Web Services. Its only job is to get the traffic to the right cluster. But once it's inside that cluster, the NGINX Ingress controller takes over and does the really detailed work, routing your request to exactly the right microservice, whether that's the shopping cart, the payment system, or the user login. So after all this history and all these cool features, you got to ask the big question: why NGINX? I mean, it wasn't the first to do this stuff. Its main competitor, a server called Apache, was already everywhere. So what made NGINX take over the world?
Well, it really boiled down to a few key things that made it different from Apache. NGINX was built from the ground up with a more modern, lightweight design. This made it way faster at serving things like images and cached pages, and it used a lot less memory while doing it. On top of all that, a lot of developers just found it simpler and easier to configure. Those advantages made it the perfect tool for the super high-traffic, fast-paced web that we have today.
So there you have it. From solving the web's very first traffic jams to directing requests inside the most complex cloud apps of today, NGINX really is the invisible engine of our digital world. It's the perfect example of that hidden tech that just makes everything work. Which kind of leaves you with one last thought, right? What other invisible engines are out there quietly powering your daily life?